I'll just put this frame down here. Okay, beside you here.
As you can see, Paul and Paul Sr. are in their beehive here, what's known as an apiary. Paul Dosen is with his father, Paul Sr. And Paul has a visual impairment, and he is a hobby beekeeper. And to me, that is super interesting and fantastic. Paul, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for doing the interview here with us. Our show on Where You Live Here is all about beekeeping and pollinators, and we've had some really interesting guests on our show this week, and you are one of the highlights. So you have a visual impairment. What is that like when you're in there with your father? Like your father goes in with you. What is that like for you?
Well, when I first started in 2012, it was pretty intimidating, all those bees, and that's all you kind of hear is the hum of the hive and bees kind of crawling all over your hands, and you have to do everything by feel. So you have to brush the bees off of the frames before you take them out, and then obviously you have to feel for bees as you put the frame back in so you don't squish any bees. So for me it was a very tactile experience, and I probably got more stings than I should have just because I couldn't see what I was doing.
Understandable.
But the bees kind of taught me to kind of be careful and to kind of just move them out of the way as I put the frames back in the hive and as I brush them off the frames. So in that respect, I was able to learn and gauge the bees' temperament and their reaction to me while I was in the hive.
Wow, that's amazing. So when you're in there, is there a different pitch? Is there a different, what is the feeling? Can you describe that?
Yeah, after you're in the hive for a certain amount of time, the bees raise the volume of the hive by a loud buzzing sound to indicate that they're getting a little annoyed. And also by smell, so they produce a banana kind of smelling alarm pheromone to kind of let you know to back off and that you've been in the hive too long.
Wow.
So those are your two key indicators that you've been in there too long and that you should close the lid before things start to get a little bit excited. And by kind of listening and by smelling those cues, you can kind of avoid a lot of stings and mishaps that kind of happen with beekeeping. So.
Wow. That's amazing. That is, I found that just so fascinating. So you're in there, you're moving the frames around. What is it that keeps you going back into that hive?
Well, basically bees, they've always have fascinated me. As a child, I was always interested, and still am, in bumblebees. So they're kind of a distant cousin of the honeybee. And I've always, been interested in those types of bees. They're solitary bees. They kind of live on their own. Well, they're semi-social, so their queens overwinter during the winter, and then they create a new hive or new nest in the spring. Unlike the honeybee, where the entire hive survives the winter as one cluster. And that kind of got me interested in bees in general. And then in 2011, I was part of a creative Willow Springs Creative Center out on Lappy there, and they kind of got me into the beekeeping, and they had a hive set up there, and I was able to go out there and see the bees. And then I actually met Barry Tabor, who was a commercial beekeeper in Thunder Bay, and a year later I was able to get my own hive from Barry and start beekeeping. The fascinating thing about bees to me is that you're always learning something new. No matter how many scientific papers I read about bees, and I've contacted and stayed in touch with several scientific beekeepers throughout the United States and Canada, and I've kind of established kind of a network of contacts of beekeepers around the world. They've, no matter who you listen to and no matter how many PhDs they have, you're always learning something new about bees when you open up a hive. So the bees, unfortunately, are the ones that are not writing the books, and they always have something interesting and new to share with us. So.
Now, how do you feel about the state of the honeybee, the kind of the state of the population of the honeybee? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, in the last 10, 12 years, bees have been in severe decline due to pesticides and also the chemicals that beekeepers are putting into the hives. And I mean, to this day, we're not entirely sure what's causing the wide range of collapse. That's been kind of known as colony collapse disorder. It's a disorder where all the bees just leave the hive and just leave the queen with a small amount of bees remaining in the hive. So in that respect, there's been a lot of research that's been poured into beekeeping and bees over the last 12 years. And scientists of all types are doing everything they can to find out the cause of that phenomenon and to more or less save the bees, because they're not only a crucial component of the agricultural industry, but we also need them for ourselves, because we also benefit from the honey production and just the educational aspects of learning about bees. So.
And they pollinate all our flowers and
That's
our
right.
food.
That's right.
Is there anything that you're doing, or anything that you can tell our viewers to do to help, keep these little guys going?
Well, just recently, up until 2012, Thunder Bay was mite-free, so we didn't have the parasitic varroa mite that was infecting bees throughout most of Ontario, Canada, and the United States. And up until recently, we've been infected with this mite, and as a result, that's a major kind of destructor of honeybee colonies here in Thunder Bay right now. My main piece of advice for new beekeepers especially is to continuously monitor your mite levels. And you can contact several beekeepers in Thunder Bay. The Thunder Bay Beekeepers Association has some wonderful people there that can help you get a reading on your mite levels. There's an inspector in Thunder Bay that can also help you do that. And just making sure that your hives are healthy and are thriving is something that's important to ensuring that the bees survive the winter, because the mite is just one more stress that the bees don't need over the winter, and they also have a huge stress of just the cold weather here. So.
Yes, our climate's not the best
No.
for them, I bet. Now, that is fantastic. So we're going to wrap up our show here with you today. We've spoken to a few different groups that do beekeeping and have apiaries. Now, we've spoken to a 12-year-old boy, Oliver. We've spoken to you with a visual impairment. So anybody can essentially have their own beehives.
That's right.
That's amazing. So I encourage anyone out there that is interested in this to either reach out to the Thunder Bay Beekeepers Association, or Roots to Harvest is a great resource. Berry's a great resource to really help these little guys and to thrive right here in Thunder Bay. Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Paul?
No, just that I hope that everyone has a great beekeeping season, and to just keep an eye on varroa mite levels and feed your colonies to prepare them for the winter, and everything should be okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to our viewers for watching Where You Live right here on Shaw TV. For myself, Sarah Love, and Janice Gamison, keep watching us on Shaw TV.